A year ago, my wife and I reached a point where we no longer understood each other. It became obvious to me that my wife had distanced herself from me, displaying rude and aggressive behavior, and constantly expressing her displeasure towards me. Naturally, this annoyed me, and even my mother-in-law became concerned. Despite our limited communication, she began to give me various pieces of advice in an attempt to help my wife and I mend our relationship. Eventually, the painful truth came out, revealing the reason for my wife's drastic change. She had been unfaithful to me. This revelation caused a huge scandal that involved not only my mother-in-law, but also my wife's sister. Enraged, I raised my voice and demanded that my wife leave our home, threatening to file for divorce. Eventually, my sister-in-law took my wife to her home, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. It was then that she tried to comfort me by telling me the whole truth about her personal life and voicing her displeasure at her husband's cheating, which continued throughout her life. Even in her old age, she always feels it when he leaves for a mistress. The mother-in-law started making comparisons, claiming that the daughter had taken after her father and tried to apologize for her. I couldn't understand what the mother-in-law had to do with this. We talked for a long time until the mother-in-law asked me what I thought about what I should do next. However, I was too flustered to give an answer. I needed time to think. My mother-in-law was still lingering, and I was tired of trying to subtly hint that it was time for her to go home. However, it seemed as if she either didn't understand or pretended not to. Finally, I bluntly stated my desire to shower and go to bed. My mother-in-law wished me a good night and left. I asked her to close the door behind her. Left alone, I undressed in the bedroom and headed for the shower. As I walked through the living room, I suddenly saw my mother-in-law again. She opened her mouth, staring at me. I hastily covered myself. "Oh, sorry," was all she uttered. I stared at her in confusion. She spoke quickly, expressing her intention to leave, but thought she should check to see if I needed anything. Besides, she had forgotten to give me something she had bought for me. Before I could answer, my mother-in-law handed me a bottle of whiskey. I felt a little awkward, but just nodded my thanks and headed for the bathroom. Standing under the jets of water, I suddenly felt the door slam. I turned my head, and what I saw made me breathless with excitement. I blinked my eyes quickly. I thought it was a dream. Then I scrutinized her naked body in amazement. I examined her from head to toe, not knowing how to react. I closed and opened my eyes again to make sure I wasn't dreaming. What the hell was going on? The silence was broken by my mother-in-law. She suggested that we might find solace in each other. "If you don't mind, I'd like to take a shower with you." Slowly, she began to remove her shoes, the only article of clothing she had left on. I fixated on her feet as I have a strong admiration for a woman's feet. It fueled a strong desire in me. Her feet possessed a captivating beauty. My buddy showed interest in her. She saw it and liked it very much. I remained in a state of shock. My mother-in-law took the initiative and approached me, ready to deal with the situation. Streams of water from the shower continued to run down her body. "Is it okay if I stay the night at your place after the shower?" I just nodded in response, not knowing how to respond. This day had been filled with a lot of stress after I found out about my wife's infidelity. The situation with my mother-in-law was incomprehensible. However, I embraced it, finding pleasure in the moment and not dwelling on the complexities. We were barely on our feet, as if time had frozen. Nothing else mattered except this wild, unbridled passion. Afterward, we cleaned ourselves up and returned to the bedroom, where we again indulged in pleasure. Toward morning, we fell asleep, and I drifted into a peaceful slumber, knowing that I had given her pleasure. I felt satisfied. The next day, we discussed the situation and concluded that we needed to find solace after so many experiences. Subsequently, my mother-in-law came to visit us again. Our meetings continued for several months. Throughout this time, my wife made efforts to repair our relationship. I gradually cooled down and changed my mind about divorce. We began living together again as husband and wife. My relationship with my mother-in-law ceased. She still visits us, but now acts like my wife's mother. Everything that happened between us is in the past, a secret kept only between us. If we go back in time a little bit to the story of my wife's infidelity, I forgave my wife because I blew off steam on her lover, whom I met on the street in the evening. I smoothed his nose a bit so that he would no longer want to sleep with other people's wives. That's the way it is now. Everything's fine.